Today we are going to talk about identification methods in TOSCA, and we are going to cover all the different properties and how to use them in TOSCA. My name is Abhishek. Please like, share and comment, and in case you're not already existing subscriber, do consider subscribing. So let's get into this. So first method is identification by properties. Okay, so I have TOSCA open here and we are going to use this particular application. We are going to perform very minor operations just to understand all the different identification methods in one video. Okay, so I'll go to modules first and I'll quickly create a folder, right click, and here I'll find this option to create a folder, and I'll just write identification. Okay, now I'll select the scan option and I'll click on application, and I'll select this particular application, double click on this, or you can click on the scan below as well. So what you can see after scanning the application is we have three properties already identified. Okay, now in order to check that all the items are unique or not which you want to use, you can click on this checkbox. Using this, clicking on this checkbox is going to capture this even if you remove this to this particular section. Okay, now here you see this particular item is unique by validating in the bottom left corner, selected item is unique. So what TOSCA has done is TOSCA has by default selected the properties which it needed to use for unique identification. Okay, now here in the right hand side you can see this identify by properties section. So if I scroll this side, and if I scroll this below, here you see that there are two properties it is using, ID and tag, with which it is able to find this item uniquely. Okay, now this is not going to happen all the time, and you probably need to always check that by which property TOSCA is identifying it. If those are not stable properties, try to find which other stable property you can use, and you can use XPath as well here. In case you are not able to find any unique property, you can select on this more option and click on load all. What is this going to do is whatever properties associated with this particular element, it is going to load all of them. So now you see there are a lot of different properties to choose from. So whichever is more stable and works for you, you can select that to identify. Now I'll close this and we'll see how this works. Okay, so I'll click on save here. You can change the name there as well, but I can change it after the module is created. So once you have saved the scan, it is going to create a module here. So I'll just try properties. This is what we are trying to identify. Now here I'll quickly create a folder, right click folder, and I'll just write properties here, and I'll drag and drop my module which we have created for property identification. I'll drag and drop this here. Okay, and I'll just rename this as well to properties. I can put this as identification. Okay, so now we are not going to put launch URL and browser and all those details because we are going to perform a single action, and in case of TOSCA, whichever browser is in focus, it is going to perform operation on that item. Okay, so I'll keep this in focus. I'll go back and here I'll run this particular test case. Okay, so I can right click run in Scratchbook, or I can click on F6 as well. So I'll run this. So what it is going to do is it is going to find that unique element here. One minor mistake. So if you want to pause it, you can pause it as well. But once you pause, sometimes it takes some time, but then it will show this cross icon. So you can terminate your execution as well. So here, since it is a text box, I need to perform some action, right? I need to enter some value to this. So how do we do that? We go to the action mode, we click on this drop down, and there are a lot of different options, but since we want to input the data, I'll select this option, and let's say I want to pass properties in the username. Now if I run this, it is going to populate properties in the username section. Okay, and if the test case is passed, our bar is going to show green, and if it fails, it is going to show red. So we'll wait for the operation to finish. So see, now properties is populated using TOSCA properties method and automation. So properties is populated here. Let me remove this. So we understand now how identify by properties method works and what all things we can do around it. Okay, now I'll move to second option, identify by anchor. Okay, when do you use identify by anchor? So we use this particular property when we are not able to identify it using identification by properties. That time we use identify by anchor. So I'll click on modules. I'll click on modules and I'll click on scan, and we'll scan the same page again, but we are going to follow a different approach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the same element, but I do not want to use property. I want to use to identify it using anchor. Now how does the anchor property works? So basically, let's say I do not have properties for this particular element, like using properties I'm not able to identify it. So I'm going to take help of another stable property, and what I'm going to tell Tosca is they take property of this another element. In our case, let's say we take this login. We want you to identify username with help of the properties of login. So since we are using something else in conjunction with whichever element we want to take action on, so that is called as anchoring in Tosca. Now let's see how that works is, so if I select this username, okay, as we have seen in identify by properties, it is by default finding it as unique. So first our task is whatever element we want to use, that should be unique. So let me scroll below and I'll just remove this property. I do not want to use ID. So now you see we are getting this blue color and selected item is not unique, right? Now let's say I'm not having any other property to use. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll close this and I'll take help of anchor. How do I do that? I can click on identify by and I'll click on anchor here, and since we were discussing we want to use login, so what I need to do is I need to drag and drop this login into this particular area. Okay, so I will drag and drop this in the anchor control. So now as you can see that this has turned green. Now this was in focus and I have dragged and dropped whichever element I felt was more stable. So here our element is now uniquely identifiable. Now this is one way of identify by anchor, and then another way is, let's say I do not have that property here and I want to select it from screen. So you can just click on select on screen, and whichever element you want to identify using anchor, you can select that particular element. Both just do different ways to do that. It's the same thing. So I'll click on save here and I'll close this now, and this is going to create a module and I'll put it as anchor here. Okay, now I can drag and drop this into the test case and I'll click on identification. Here I'll just rename this to anchor. Okay, now similar action, same action we are going to perform on this. I'll click on action mode, select input, and here instead of properties I'll write anchor, because we are understanding this property. Our page is open, it is in focus. I'll scroll back, I will run this test case. This is going to populate anchor in the username section. That is our success test scenario. Now I'm going to create detailed video also of all the identification elements, because there are a lot of things to cover in this. So in case you need that video, do mention in the comment section. So see, our anchor is getting populated here. Now we understood our second identification method. Okay, now in case we are not, let me close this, in case we are not able to find it using properties method or anchor method, in the third method we have image. Okay, though image identification method is not recommended even by TOSCA, but there could be cases in which you are not able to identify with the other elements, then you can use this particular identification property as well. Okay, so let's see how this works. Let me remove this, and we can probably use username property to fill in the details, and we can use login as the image identification. Okay, now I'll click on this, I'll click on identification, click on scan application. I'm using the same application, same scenario, so that it is easy to understand. Click on scan here, and same thing we are going to get. If I select username, I am able to identify, so I'll remove the ID section here just to understand how to work with this. Now in case of working with image, I'll click on identify by and I'll click on image. Okay, now here you'll see this particular option. So let me first explain the concept here. So there is something called control images and identifying images. Okay, so what happens is, similar way like anchor, in case I want to input something in username, I do not have unique property, but I want to identify it using image. So this is going to be one particular section, and this is going to be another section. Now this is going to be the identifying image, and this is going to be the control section. Okay, now one way to do is I can click on this, I can select these things, or you can use the hotkey F12. So let me minimize this and let me click on F12. So here you will see the element which is selected, it is pointing on this. So I can, and here if you see this particular details as well provided by TOSCA, that drag the cursor around the area used for identification. So it knows that we need to find this particular element since that was selected, and I want to use this particular image. Okay, so if I'll click on this, you see this arrow is coming. Okay, so using properties of login image, it is going to find username. Okay, now TOSCA will give us this particular pop-up which will say that do you want to consider this, because this might result in a long duration. So since we are just understanding this, I am just going to click on yes. And now if you see, our username property is unique, but what it is using, it is using image. So this is one way of finding it. Let me close this. I'll show you another way. It is going to perform the exact same action, but this is going to get routed in a different way. Okay, so you go to the modules, and here you right click and you will get this option image. Okay, so if I'll click on this, it is going to populate the similar page where it is going to ask the control as well as the identifying image, and you can select accordingly. Since we have already scanned this, I'll write it as image. Okay, and here in the test cases section, we can either drag and drop or we can search for it as well. So I'll click on this, I'll create a test case and I will write image. Okay, now after creating this, you can right click on this and you can click on this option search and add test step, or alternatively you can use control plus T as well. Now whatever modules exist in your project is going to get populated, standard modules as well as the custom modules which you have created. So here as you can see image is there, I'm going to select. So this is just another way of importing your module into the test case. So this has came here, we are going to perform the same action. I'll put input, I'll put the value as image here. Okay, and I'll save and we can try to run this. So let me just validate. Okay, this is in focus. I'll right click, I'll run in Scratchbook. Now it is going to populate image in the username section. It is going to take a few seconds to operate, but as long as image is getting populated in the username section, we are good. Okay, perfect. So see, image is getting populated. Now we have understood these three different identification methods. Okay, now the fourth identification method is identify by index. Okay, now let's say none of these properties are working for us. So let me close this, move back to modules, click on this, click on scan, and we are going to scan the same. Let me remove this and I will click on scan. I'll click on application, and now we are going to understand identify by index. So I'll click on this. Okay, and similar thing I'm going to do, we are going to operate on username, and I'm just going to remove one of the identification properties, so it is not able to find it uniquely. So I have removed this. Now selected item is not unique. Now in case of index, I'll click on this and here I'll find the option, the fourth option, index. So I'll click on index. Now here it's by default going to detect this, that what particular index it is. Okay, and it is recommended only if you're not able to find it with all three different options which we have discussed. So here it is actually going to find whatever is there in form of the indexes. Okay, so whatever is populated, you can just click on this checkbox and here you will see the option that index is there. Similarly, I forgot to mention, but you will see uh, a arrow kind of option that is for anchor, and image kind of icon that is for this, and this is for properties. So we can easily see that with what all different kind of controls it is using to identify a certain element. See, the moment we have clicked on this index, it is able to find it uniquely. Let me remove, and again it will not be unique. Okay, so let's see this in action. I'll click on save and I will close this and I'll go to my modules. Here I'll write index. Okay, now again I'll go to my test cases, go to identification. I will create a test case here. Sorry, I do not want to create a folder. Let me delete this. Right click, test case and I'll write index. Okay, and right click, search and add test step, and here I'll find index. So I'll select this. Now exact same thing we have scanned, so I'm going to perform the same operation. Now we are going to mention index here. Okay, okay, and now let's run this test script. Click on run in Scratchbook, and it is going to populate index here. Now these all different identification methods have a lot of different things to be discussed on to become an expert. I'm going to discuss this in future videos. In case you want me to prioritize that, do let me know in the comment section. Okay, so see, it has been able to find this property uniquely here. Okay, and we understood our fourth different identification methods. Ideally these are the major identification methods, but there is one thing called identify by parent as well. So basically, like let's say one child element we have. Okay, so it has some properties, but we are not able to identify it uniquely. Okay, and it has other parent elements as well. Okay, so what we can do is we can select the parent as well. However, we will use whatever actions we want to perform on the child, but using parents feature I can identify a child as well, a basic functionality concept. So let me try to, so this particular page I have already tested. So for logging into this particular page, we can use standard user, and it's an automation mock website, so you can use it for practice. And this is the password. So just for understanding the third option, I will just click on this add to cart. Two items I've selected, and I'll click on this. Okay, here you are able to see there are two remove buttons, right? So let's scan this page. I will go to this, I'll go to modules, and we are going to understand how to identify using parent. I'll click on scan application. Now you're not going to get this particular option populated in terms of the identification methods in TOSCA. So let me select this. Okay, so here if I click on identify, there is no method going to say it's parent. Okay, but let's say I want to identify this remove button. Okay, now this remove button is unique, so let me try to remove some of the ID part or something here. So let's say I will remove this ID. Now it is not uniquely identifiable, but I'll try to see if there is any parent of this particular button and can I identify it using that. So for that I can increase the filter. Okay, you can increase the filter till the time like you have a lot of different filters, so it is going to add more and more properties till the time we are able to find a parent. So see, this is the child, this is the parent, and there are two childs here. Okay, now this is not uniquely identifiable, but if I go to this particular element $29.99 remove, so here inner text it is using and tag it is using. So let's say I want to use this. So see, the moment I'll click on this, my child element which was not getting uniquely identified is uniquely identifiable now. Okay, now this is the whole concept. Let me remove this all the way back. So here you see, this is the child, this is the parent. So this is also one identification method. Basically it is going to use the properties in conjunction with the parent, but I want to perform the operation on this button. I do not want to do this. This is just used for identification. So I can change the name as well. I'll just write parent here, and I'll write child remove. Okay, child underscore remove button. So I'll write btn, and I'll save this. I'll close this, and in my modules I will write parent child or something, and I will drag and drop this into test cases. Okay, put it in this, and I'll put parent here. Okay, now since we are going, this is a different page. Okay, and this is a button. So in button you can perform an action called click, right? So what we can do is, see, here is the parent, here is the child. I just want to perform action on the child. Okay, so I will select you can just write the value click here by using this curly brackets CLICK and closing the bracket. Okay, now whatever value you put, based on that, TOSCA by default selects this option. Okay, now here you'll see the action mode select is by default populated. So select is a passive action mode which just guides TOSCA on where the element is located and wherever operation is there. So I'm going to explain all these different action modes in a different video. Do check that out as well. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to click on remove. So let me run this now and see if it is working. So I'm running in Scratchbook and it's going to click on remove, and I think the application is built in a way this particular item is going to get removed. So let's see. So it went to that and it has removed that particular item. So it is working fine. So this is also one of the ways in which we can identify a particular element uniquely. Okay. Now there could be there are a lot of things inside all the different identification methods, but this is good enough to get started and create end-to-end test scenarios. In case you are looking for detail, do let me know in the comment section, and do comment and let me know if you like my content. Have a great day.